The Restoration, better known as the Age of Dryden. The restoration of the English monarchy began in 1660, when the English, Scottish, and Irish monarchies were all restored under Charles II, after the interregnum that followed the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. The term restoration is used to describe both the actual event by which the monarchy was restored, and the period of several years afterwards in which a new political settlement was established. It is very often used to cover the whole reign of Charles II from 1660 to 1685, and often the brief reign of his younger brother James II from 1685 to 1688. In certain contexts, it may be used to cover the whole period of the later Stuart monarchs as far as the death of Queen Anne and the accession of the Hanoverian George I in 1714.
England. On April 4, 1660, Charles II issued the Declaration of Breda, in which he made several promises in relation to the reclamation of the Crown of England. Monk organized the Convention Parliament, which met for the first time on April 25. On May 8, it proclaimed that the King Charles II had been the lawful monarch since the execution of Charles I on January 30, 1649, constitutional. It was as if the last 19 years had never happened. Charles returned from exile, leaving The Hague on May 23 and landing at Dover on May 25. He entered London on May 29, his birthday, to celebrate His Majesty's return to his Parliament. May 29 was made a public holiday, popularly known as the Oak Apple Day. He was crowned at Westminster Abbey on April 23, 1661.
Restoration literature. English literature written after the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, following the period of the Commonwealth. Some literary historians speak of the period as bounded by the reign of Charles II, from 1660 to 1685, while others prefer to include within its scope the writings produced during the reign of James II from 1685 to 1688, and even literature of the 1690s is often spoken of as restoration. By the time, however, the reign of William III and Mary II from 1689 to 1702 had begun, and the ethos of courtly and urban fashion was a result sober, Protestant, and even pious, in contrast to the sexually and intellectually libertine spirit of court life under Charles II. Many typical literary forms of the modern world, including the novel, biography, history, travel writing, and journalism, gained confidence during the Restoration period, when new scientific discoveries and philosophical concepts, as well as new social and economic conditions came into play. There was a great outpouring of pamphlet literature, too, much of it politico-religious, while John Bunyan's great allegory Pilgrim's Progress also belongs to this period. Much of the best poetry, notably that of John Dryden, the great literary figure of his time, in both poetry and prose, the Earl of Rochester, Samuel Butler, and John Oldham, was satirical and led directly to later achievements of Alexander Pope, Jonathan Swift, and John Gray in the Augustan Age. The Restoration period was, above all, a great age of drama. Heroic plays influenced by principles of French neoclassicism enjoyed a vogue, but the age is chiefly remembered for its glittering, critical comedies of manners by such playwrights as George Etheridge, William Wycherley, Sir John Vanbrugh, and William Congreve.
John Dryden. After John Donne and John Milton, John Dryden was the greatest English poet of the 17th century. After William Shakespeare and Ben Jonson, he was the greatest playwright, and he has no peer as a writer of prose, especially literary criticism, and as a translator. Other figures such as George Herbert or Andrew Marvell or William Wycherley or William Congreve may figure more prominently in anthologies and literary histories, but Dryden's sustained output in both poetry and drama ranks him higher. After Shakespeare, he wrote the greatest heroic play of the century, The Conquest of Granada, 1671, and the greatest tragic comedy, Marriage et la Mode, 1671. He wrote the greatest tragedy of the Restoration, All for Love, 1677. the greatest comic tragedy, Don Sebastian, 1689, and one of the greatest comedies, Amphitryon, 1690. As a writer of prose, he developed a lucid professional style, relying essentially on patterns and rhythms of everyday speech. As a critic, he developed a combination of methods, historical, analytical, evaluative, and dialogic, that proved enabling to neoclassical theory. As a translator, he developed an essay manner of what he called paraphrase that produced brilliant versions of Homer, Lucretius, Horace, Ovid, Juvenal, Persius, Giovanni Boccaccio, Geoffrey Chaucer, and above all, Virgil. His translation of the Aeneid remains the best ever produced in English. As a poet, he perfected the heroic couplet, sprinkling it with judicious enjambments, triplets, and metric variations, and bequeathing it to Alexander Pope to work upon it his own magic. Dryden, the poet, is best known today as a satirist. Although he wrote only two great original satires, Mac Flecknoe, 1682, and The Meadow, 1682, his most famous poem, Absalom and Achitophel, 1681, while it contains several brilliant satiric portraits, unlike satire comes to a final resolution, albeit tragic for both David and his son. Dryden's other great poems, Annus Mirabilis, 1667, Religio Laica, 1682, The Hind and the Panther, 1687, Alexander's Feast, 1697, and To My Honored Kinsman, 700, are not satires either, and he contributed a wonderful body of occasional poems, panegyrics, odes, elegies, prologues, and epilogues.
Dreams are but interludes which fancy makes. When monarch reason sleeps, this mimic wakes. Compounds a medley of disjointed things, a mob of cobblers and a court of kings. Light fumes are merry, grosser fumes are sad. Both are the reasonable soul run mad. And many monstrous forms in sleep we see, that neither were, nor are, nor e'er can be. Sometimes forgotten things, long cast behind, rush forward in the brain and come to mind. The nurse's legends are for truths received, and the man's dreams but what the boy believed. Sometimes we but rehearse a former play. The night restores our actions done by day. As hounds in sleep will open for their prey. In short, the farce of dreams is of a piece, chimeras all, and more absurd or less.